needed one you. Only one you. Just needed one you. Only one you. Just needed one you. Only one you. Just
Hello everyone, welcome to the Tobacco Control Story of Africa, and we're starting off with the Tobacco Control Story of Kenya. I'm joined by Achieng Otieno, who has been a tobacco control advocate for a very long time, and we'd like to hear his insights, his journey throughout tobacco control here in Kenya. So Achieng, thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell us a bit about yourself and where your journey in tobacco control started.
Okay, well, my name is Achieng Otieno, and I run an organization called Being Africa, which basically is an organization that aspires to inform, inspire, and involve people in the fight against non-communicable diseases. Personally, I'm a digital communication specialist, and my journey in tobacco control started way back in 2014. And I must say it was either by accident or by divine purpose. Yeah, because coming from a field, I'm an IT specialist. I'm trained in IT, and I've been doing IT I had done it for some times before I moved to tobacco control. And this organization invited me to support them in communication and a bit of IT. And that's how I found myself in tobacco control. Yeah, so it's not a field that I had studied in by then, but that's how I found myself there.
Mm-hmm. So you find yourself in this organization. What specific role in communication were you supporting them in?
My specific role was to build a communication strategy. And also to support the organization in their internal and external communications, owing that this organization is an umbrella organization for many other organizations. So the idea was to support this organization in communicating with their member organizations, and also the external partners, which is something that I believe we did so well then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are there any legacy projects that you did that really stood out? This is around 2014, you said.
Yeah, from 2014. Yeah. Well, interesting. Yeah, there are quite a number. There are quite a number of projects that we did, and I believe there are projects that are continuing up to now, we can say. First of all, we can look at the advocacy. In 2014, the digital advocacy space, particularly for tobacco control, not only tobacco control, generally, for most organizations were really struggling in that. And I must say that during this period, we were able to set up structures, we were able to set up strategies that were able to, gain more mileage, particularly on the policy landscape in the country, and also in the public awareness spectrum. Yeah.
Achieng, paint for us a picture of 2014, the situation in Kenya. How was the tobacco control landscape at that time?
Well, the general landscape of tobacco control in 2014, first of all, like I mentioned, coming from a field that is totally unrelated, it was a bit hazy for me. But now getting into the tobacco control efforts or space, I first of all learned that there was a law. Yeah, as you know, Kenya passed a tobacco control law in 2007, and there were efforts to ensure that this law is being enforced, it's being implemented, and people are complying with the law. So in that context, there were a lot of things that were being done by government, civil society. The space was more of raising awareness about the harms of tobacco, the existence of the policies, and how well the public can also support in terms of enforcement of these policies. Yeah, so it was it started a bit hazy, but as we went along, I realized that there was a lot of awareness that was being done, particularly with this organization that I was supporting, and there were also efforts from the government, and it was also amazing to see that the government, particularly within the Ministry of Health and the civil society, was sort of working in collaboration to ensure certain things were happening around that time, around ensuring that the policy was in place and it was being implemented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of collaboration between civil society, government, and how was the relation in terms of East Africa and supporters from other parts of the world?
There interestingly, there were a lot of support, and because I came to learn that there were other organizations within the region, within the East African region. We had organizations that were also playing part in terms of supporting each other, and even the network that supports tobacco control in Africa. I think it's Africa Tobacco Control Alliance, which sort of brings in different advocates from different countries in the continent, just to support the advocacy agenda. So in terms of support from the region, I believe there are a number of people who are coming in to support. In fact, even trainings, you think you look at a country like Uganda, which houses the Center for Tobacco Control in Africa, which offers training to government. So they are also playing a key role in training government players and civil society actors, because I remember with this organization we were in a position, to have even some training on just generally communication, and we were also in a position to come up with certain strategies on how to ensure certain things were happening within the tobacco control policy circles. Yeah, so in terms of the region, there were quite a number of support. In terms of within the country, there were a lot of collaboration between civil society, government, and interestingly, even faith-based organizations. Yeah.
So Achieng, in 2014-2015, please tell me about CTCA, the capacity it built in Kenya and in East Africa, and its contribution really. And also I'm curious to know, how was the tobacco industry behaving at that time?
Well, 2014-2015, I think there were a lot of learning, particularly for me. It was a steep learning curve. But like I said, within the region, there are particular organizations that actually support the fight against tobacco control, against tobacco rather. And in Uganda particularly, there is the Center for Tobacco Control in Africa, which is an organization that has been hosted at the Makerere University. And this is particularly to support issues research and also to support capacity building for governments. CTCA supports governments, yeah, but in one or two occasions you find them supporting even civil society in various occasions, yeah. So they sort of help build capacity of government players, supporting the civil society. At some point in 2014, they played a very key role in supporting the government, because I also partook the training that we had with the CTCA, where we were coming up with a communication strategy, tobacco industry counter strategies and stuff like that. So they've really played a key role in terms of building capacity of government and also building capacity of civil society. Yeah. The other question is about the industry. How the industry was responding to this globally. And the interesting thing about the industry is that it never changes. Their strategies are basically the same. It's like they get it from a book or something. It's a script that they've tried to unfold each and every time. Because when you look at around that time, there were a lot of interference. First of all, before the law was passed, There are a lot of stories that have been told about how the industry was trying to interfere with the process of policy formulation, them sort of bribing policy makers, members of parliament. There were a number of pictures that were actually taken of members of parliament being in Mombasa. They were actually courtesy of the tobacco industry. But the idea was to delay this process and even to do away with the policy. Fortunately, it passed. So this was a period where the country is actually working towards implementing this law, and the industry, as we know it, first of all, they have to compromise policymakers to ensure that the people who are duty bearers are not performing their roles. So one, they would compromise them. They would actually bribe a number of them, employ some delaying tactics. So you would actually see that the industry, you don't see their face, but you see them through the action of the people who are working on their behalf. And these are the policy makers. When you see some unnecessary delays in terms of enforcement, you know this is not normal, because the Ministry of Health is the custodian of public health in the country, and implementing tobacco control policies is the work of the Ministry of Health. So when you see certain delays here and there, you start questioning. So the industry was the biggest culprit, and a number of studies that were done by that time, particularly the tobacco industry interference index of 2014-2015, really showed a number of interferences by the tobacco industry, which went all the way to compromising policymakers at different levels, compromising other duty actors at certain levels, even introducing the aspect of even the front groups that they were using to make noise in terms of how injurious the policies that are being enforced are to their businesses and even to the consumers.
Tell us a bit about front groups. For those who don't know front groups, what are they, and how different are they from the big tobacco industry?
Front groups, really, you didn't say it's an appendage of the tobacco industry, because a front group in this context would be someone who tries to act on behalf. So the industry is sort of shy of coming, say, before the camera. So they sort of send someone to speak on their behalf. And you would see by that time, you would actually see a lot of noise coming from the National Chamber of Commerce, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, maybe bar and restaurant owners associations. These are front groups that are being used by the industry. The reason as to why we are calling them front groups, they are speaking the industry language. They are not, you wouldn't brand them as industry per se, but they are speaking on behalf of the industry, of the tobacco companies. So, which brings in the issue of the tobacco industry. So they fall within that category on the basis that their language and what they push on the advocate for is pro-tobacco companies or pro-tobacco business. So that makes them tobacco industry in that context. Yeah.
Achieng, you mentioned that the tobacco industry back then in 2014, 2015 kept interfering with policies that existed. Which specific policies were interfered with? Did we have a ban in smoking back then in public places, and how different is the industry now? Are they employing the same strategies? From your experience, what have you noticed?
Yeah, the industry interference in 2014. Like I said, it was all the efforts that the government and the civil society and other tobacco control actors were to ensure that this policy is being implemented or enforced. And part of the provisions of this policy bans tobacco advertising, promotion, sponsorship, and even it bans smoking in public places. You know, although in the act it wasn't very clear what public places were, But generally, the law banned smoking in public places, meaning that if the government was to enforce this, no one should smoke in any public place. This means bus stops. This would mean government offices or any place that is accessible to the public. But the industry, in its own wisdom, like we said earlier, they tried to interfere with the act itself, but it's passed in 2007. But there's something that the industry actually contributed to adding onto the act, which is a phrase that brought in all the confusion that everyone was grappling with. After the act had pointed out that there's no smoking in public places, within Parliament, they introduced a phrase in that section, which says, except in designated smoking areas. It wasn't part of the law, but it was just a phrase that was added. So courtesy of that, you saw around that time, between 2007, 2014, going forward, we saw a mushrooming of smoking zones, which don't conform to any standard. They are actually strategically placed in public places, because the smoking zones that are spread in the country, you find them in bus stops, others next to schools, offices, public offices, and stuff like that. So that is one of the key things that the industry was doing to interfere with the implementation or enforcement of the Tobacco Control Act that bans smoking in public places.
Ideally, how should a smoking zone look like?
What the Act says, it gives provisions for a specially designated smoking area. Specially designated smoking area. So in essence, the Tobacco Control Act of Kenya ensures that Kenya is 100% smoke-free. So the specially designated smoking area, and this is a mistake that has actually gone on over time, is specifically meant for restaurant owners or any private business that would like to have a smoking zone for their clients. And that's why the law actually gives very specific provisions, very specific requirements for how the smoking zone should be. It should be a closed room with a chimney that pushes the smoke up in the sky away from the people. And anyone who cleans that room needs to clean it when no one is using the room. You understand? But the current smoking zones that you're seeing in the country, that is a violation of the tobacco control law, because they're not supposed to be there. And first of all, they are hazards by themselves. They're exposing, like one smoking zone in the country that is around the GPO area. That smoking zone, you see, GPO already, it's a public access area, and it has offices, meaning that the smoke that is emanating from there goes to the people who are working in those offices. Right across, there is the Catholic parochial school. Those are school kids. It's a primary school. So school kids are being exposed to this second-hand smoke unnecessarily. There is a church there. So even the churchgoers are being exposed to smoke unnecessarily, which is also a hazard in itself. So those are some of the ways that the tobacco industry has come up to interfere with the enforcement and implementation of the law. Because you can even see the smoking zones are colored they've been colored in a certain way, which can actually tell you the brand that they're trying to promote. You get? So those are ways that the industry interfering, because the Act bans tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. So how they're trying to escape this, they come to these places, they paint it in a certain color that is suggestive. You can actually look at the color and tell what brand of cigarettes they're trying to promote. You get? So those are ways that they're trying to maneuver with the implementation of this law. So apart from that, so the government and tobacco control actors realized that the public places is not clearly defined in the law. So the Ministry of Health came up with tobacco control regulations 2014. Yeah. And these tobacco control regulations were supposed to strengthen certain provision of the Tobacco Control Act, meaning that they are clearly defining what public places are. They're clearly defining what the provisions that were left out in the Tobacco Control Fund. Tobacco Control Fund. So they are also trying to create ways in which the Tobacco Control Fund can receive its resources. And that's why when you see the Tobacco Control Regulation, it gives a clear definition of what public places are, outlining those public places. Secondly, it also gives introduces what we are calling the Solatium Compensatory Fund, which means that it's a levy that the tobacco dealers in tobacco in the country, the tobacco manufacturers and exporters, are supposed to pay a certain percentage to government, which is whatever they are giving the government is supposed to support in issues to do with research and also dealing with the damages that the tobacco causes in the health and the community at large.
Yeah. So Achieng, tell us more about the tobacco control landscape. How has it evolved 2014? Now we're in 2015. You said there is now a tobacco control regulation in place. How did the landscape change? And also tell us about the time the tobacco industry took the government to court. How did that go? Civil society, what was their role in that case?
Towards the end of 2014, the Ministry of Health gazetted the tobacco control regulations. And what the law says, when a policy or regulation has been gazetted, it takes a certain number of time, a certain period, then it becomes operational, you know. So what really happened, the industry had tried to delay this process in Parliament, yeah, and the civil society as the watchdog of the government and as other people call them, the watchmen of the society, played a key role in actually ensuring that these regulations come out of Parliament, because there was a lot of delay. Yeah, the Committee on Delegated Legislation was really pussyfooting with the regulation, and they were buying a lot of time. So the civil society had to come in. We employed a lot of strategies, and I remember coming up with these strategies just to get these regulations from Parliament. We did a lot of email campaigns, we did a lot of SMS campaigns. We actually, what Gen Zs are doing now, the things that we did then, because we were bombarding them with messages to ensure that these regulations come out.
Then you mean the members of Parliament?
Members of Parliament, particularly the Committee on Delegated Legislation, because that is the committee in charge of laws and policies that are being formulated. So to a point where this committee became very uncomfortable and they couldn't interfere with it any longer. So the Ministry of Health gazetted the regulations, meaning that after a certain period, I think it's about 6 months, the regulations were supposed to be enforceable. Lo and behold, as it was going to hit the 6th month, the tobacco industry decided to take the government to court. So they were suing the government because they didn't want the regulation to be implemented. Their allegations were the regulations, first of all, they are not constitutional. Second of all, they're introducing things that will injure their businesses. Thirdly, they are also introducing the graphic health warnings that we see on cigarette packs today. That they felt they'll need to incorporate, to introduce new machineries so that they're able to print these kind of graphics on cigarette packs. It's a case that really, as I mentioned, these are tobacco control regulations 2014, so they were gazetted in 2014. But now in 2015, around May, June there, that is when the tobacco industry went to court, 2015. So we went through the court process, and now government, of course, they had their legal representative from the Attorney General, and the civil society also need to be represented, because civil society presents the voice of the public. So civil society had to be well enjoined in the case, and this organization that I was supporting, the Kenya Tobacco Control Alliance, now was enjoined in the case, and we were actually defending the regulations with government then. So we went through, and it took a period, can't remember the exact amount of time it took, but the High Court passed the regulation. I remember then it was Justice Justice Mombi, who passed the regulations, who said they were constitutional and the government is free to enforce them. So he gave a certain period, within 90 days, these laws should be enforceable because they were constitutional, and they passed the bar. As we were waiting for the 90 days to elapse, the industry also went back to court again, now to the Court of Appeal, to appeal the ruling. Yeah, and in this case, in this period, it was only one tobacco company that was actually suing government. That was the British American Tobacco. Now, when at the Court of Appeal, we now see new players also coming in. There was the BAT, there was Mastermind that was also coming in, and other actors who are also trying to strengthen their case at the Court of Appeal. And also at the Court of Appeal, we also realized there were some fishy things that were happening. So we as civil society had to write to the Office of the Ombudsman, who's in charge of issues judiciary. So they're able to, like, they call them out and stuff like that. So we did a lot of communication to the Office of the Ombudsman. We did a lot of communication to the President of the Judiciary, that is the Chief Justice. And to some extent, the ruling was also again in favor of the regulations. So before they were enforced or implementable, they went to the Supreme Court, now the apex court in the land, which took a lot of time. But lucky enough, in 2019, you can imagine, from 2014, 2019 November, that's when the Supreme Court now ruled in favor of the tobacco control regulations. Now let's go back at the court of appeal, where these laws they were still challenging. The industry decides to introduce the pictorial health warnings that were in the regulations that they are actually suing government for. So what they're trying to do, they were trying to hoodwink the court to believe that they're already complying, and now the court needs to listen to them. And that's why the graphic health warnings that we see now are of poor quality. They don't meet any standard, because it was an effort by the tobacco industry to interfere with the policy itself, miscommunication, misinforming the public about these effects, because the aim of these warnings was to inform the public about the harmful effects of tobacco use and the probable outcome if they continue using. But now the pictures that were there, they were distorted, they were in poor quality. No one would actually tell what these pictures are all about. Yeah, so the landscape, as you call it, there are a lot of things that have actually come to pass, because, like we said, the regulations were passed by the Supreme Court. We've also seen the government has also implemented, signed and ratified the ITP, which is a policy to curb illicit tobacco products or trade in tobacco products. The government has also introduced other tax measures to in the process to sort of try to support tobacco control. So there have been a lot of support in that context. But now the industry doesn't also sleep, because they also they're also innovative. because they see the tighter these spaces become, they need to look for ways to either circumvent the policies that are there or to bypass, so to speak, the policies and still go on with their business. So we've seen a lot of tobacco industry reinventing itself. We've seen a lot of players also coming in, aside the conventional tobacco industry players that we know. We've seen a number of things. We've also seen shisha being introduced in some ways, and the government also banning shisha in 2017. So the landscape is sort of getting more interwebbed, because we are seeing a number of players also coming in who are not the typical tobacco manufacturers that we are used to. We are seeing other players from the Chinese manufacturers who are also coming into the country, introducing the same products that the tobacco industry is also dealing in, and it's now becoming a more complex tobacco control space, which means that a number of things also need to, come in place.
In 2017, you mentioned the ban of shisha.
Yeah.
How was that situation? Because recently we saw in Mombasa there was a conversation about it, and they were saying it was not legally banned. So tell us more about 2017.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that in 2017, December of 2017, we remember these days very well, because these are some of the things that I was really very instrumental in campaigning for. First of all, NACADA had actually outlined 19 flavors of shisha that were being laced by other hard drugs, and NACADA had actually led the process in banning the 19 flavors. So it had gotten into a point where shisha was now becoming a menace, particularly to young girls, because you know how shisha is consumed. Shisha is consumed as a more or less like a group thing, So, and we saw it was being attractive to young girls. There were reports of some young girl who had passed on after consuming shisha. So it was becoming a public health hazard. And also WHO had also released a report showing that an hour of shisha smoke is equivalent to smoking up to 100 to 200 sticks of cigarette. Mm-hmm. So we really wanted to cap this before it spreads even further. So we managed to convince the Ministry of Health, and there was an order from the Ministry of Health which banned shisha then in 2017 December. Now, like I mentioned, during this period we saw other non-conventional actors within the tobacco control space who are different from the tobacco manufacturers. Now we saw players introducing shisha, and now shisha was being fueled by these other players. In 2018, these players decided to sue the government again because of the shisha ban, saying that it's going to interfere with their businesses, two, it's unconstitutional and all that. So we had to defend. We again joined the government. We were working with the Tobacco Control Board then. We pushed, and the court ruling was in favor of the government. But now, the complication was, at this time, the court had given certain what do we call this? It had given certain requirements that the government needed to fulfill to ensure that this ban stays, And some of these, there was issues to do with public participation, which we did. But now government, I don't know, it's due to their bureaucracies, I'm not very sure, it delayed in putting some of these things in place. And that's why you are seeing in Mombasa, the courts in Mombasa ruling in favor of shisha, saying that it was unconstitutional. And I would attribute this largely to the non-compliance from the part of government, because they were supposed to ensure certain things were in place, because you remember Justice Aborili at the High Court ruled in favor of the ban on shisha, and the ruling was in support of public health, and she was very categorical, saying public health supersedes any other business interest, So there was good faith from the judiciary, but now from government, the delays in ensuring some of these things were in place messed everything.
Was it documented, the ban? Was it documented?
Yes, the ban was documented. There is a clear document banning that from the ministry. It was actually in the media. It's all over. You can actually even get it a quick Google search would actually give you that document. It was a total ban, and the arguments that really ensued after were as a result of those delays and as a result of certain political influences. I'm saying political influences because when the ban was put in place, or was defined, Minister for Tourism then, that was Honorable Najib Balala, decided, actually he's the one who spoke against the ban. He's the Minister for Tourism. The Ministry of Health is the one that has enforced the ban. The Ministry for Tourism says that the ban will interfere with business and tourism in Mombasa. I'm not even surprised that in Mombasa, that's where the ruling happened. Mm-hmm. Now, if we now follow the tracks, we are able to see that there's a lot of political interference, there's a lot of industry interference, and there's a lot of lack of goodwill from government itself. And that's why the recent ruling by a court in Mombasa came the way it came. Yeah.
Tell us about this recent ruling.
Yeah, the recent ruling declared the ban unconstitutional. And it's unconstitutional for the simple fact that it did not meet the standards of the ban to be in place. Issues to do with public participation, issues to do with stakeholders being involved in terms of coming up with the policy, and issues to do with other stakeholders feeling as if there is a ban that has been imposed, but they are not sort of involved in the process. Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on plain packaging? You talked about in 2017, the tobacco industry wanted to really oppose the packaging regulations. So tell us about plain packaging, and have we achieved much over the years?
Yeah, plain packaging. Plain packaging is actually it's a very effective way to deal with public smoking. It's a way to deal with the harms that we are facing in tobacco use. But we now need to go back to the essence. The essence of this plain packaging is, one, to ensure that cigarette packs are not beautified in any way. There is a standard color which should not be attractive to the members of the public, because the idea is to demarket tobacco to the public and ensure that the tobacco industry doesn't use the cigarette pack as a marketing tool or as an advertising tool or a promotional tool, Now this takes us back to 2014, where the tobacco control regulations came in place, and tobacco control regulations introduced graphic health warnings. So Kenya is in the process, is going towards the plain packaging, which in my opinion, I think we should just prioritize plain packaging, as opposed to just introducing graphic health warnings. Now we need to move again to plain packaging. It's a long process for nothing. I think the government needs to, I know the government is in the process of revising the graphic health warnings, making them quality, and ensuring that the message that they're supposed to communicate does actually communicate. But if I were asked, I think our biggest advocacy success would be to push for plain packaging, because plain packaging, it has been researched. There is a lot of evidence from WHO, from other global health actors, which shows that plain packaging actually works. One, in reducing the tobacco usage. Two, in reducing the people who are actually being initiated into tobacco use. Yeah, and three, it also discourages the industry from using some dubious means to attract people into tobacco use. But there is a caveat here. Even as we are pushing for plain packaging, we really need to ensure that the policy makers, policy actors, and policy implementers are in sync with what we are trying to push for. Because we are known as a country to coming up with policies, a lot of policies, but implementation now goes down. It's not being enforced and all that. But plain packaging is very effective. If the government were to implement that, I think we would have made a huge milestone in tobacco control. First of all, we would have worked towards reducing the tobacco users in the country. We would have reduced early initiation. We would have actually discouraged the industry from using dubious means in attracting to attract other non-tobacco users in the country. So plain packaging would actually work magic in the country. But the question is, are we ready? Are the policymakers ready? And are we ready to deal with the backlash from the tobacco industry? Because if the graphic health warnings that are simply just improving on the quality of the graphic health warnings that are in the market currently, and also in ensuring that the public is able to interact with the images. The industry is already up in arms, hiring people all over just to come and shoot down, bringing baseless argument just to fight the graphic health warnings, which tells you when plain packaging argument is also introduced, the same or even twice as much backlash will be felt.
Achieng, what do you think a tobacco-free future in Kenya looks like? You've talked about 2014, 2015, 2017. So how does the future look like for Kenya in tobacco control?
Yeah, we've seen the journey that the country has taken from 2007, coming up with the Act, 2014 coming up with the regulations, 2020 coming out, ratifying the ITP, and we are actually seeing significant progress. And in fact, now that the country is actually in the process of reviewing the Tobacco Control Act, it also gives us an opportunity to ensure that the Act is watertight and it's solid in some way to curb the tobacco control menace, being cognizant of the fact that the industry is also reinventing itself. So even as we are reviewing the Act, we need to look at the realities on the ground, the changes, the technological advancement. So the Act needs to be alive to all those kind of dynamics. And besides that, we are also seeing a lot of support from young generation, and the fact that we are talking about a tobacco-free future for the country, I see it's a possibility. It is a possibility if all the actors just come in sync. There's no need for infighting. There is no need for outshining. There is nothing to outshine here. The idea is tobacco control is pro-health. We are looking at the public health, the people's health, and for anyone who's lost someone to tobacco would actually join in. And from over the years, we've seen a number of people who are coming out just to support the fight and just show that they actually support what tobacco control is all about. A tobacco-free Kenya is a possibility. because in 2022, the government, with support from WHO, with support from WFP, and with the ministry, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, the county government of Migori, they come up with the tobacco-free farms. That is a very significant step which needs to be supported to ensure that tobacco farmers, a good percentage of tobacco farmers shift into these other economically viable alternatives. Because what we need to ensure is that we break the supply chain for the tobacco industry. If we break the supply chain, we are going to achieve greater results. And one of the ways is what the Ministry of Health did in 2022 by introducing the tobacco-free farms. So we need to support more farmers to migrate from tobacco growing into other economically viable alternatives. And we also need to reduce the support that the government probably is giving to tobacco farmers. Because when you show that you are supporting these farmers, it shows that you support tobacco growing, and in return, it's going to be retrogressive to the tobacco control efforts that have been made in the country. So tobacco-free Kenya is possible. It is a possibility, and it's a future that I can vividly see that it's attainable. We are able to push towards that. We need to get all hands on deck. We need to get everyone involved. A faith-based organization, public health organization, human rights organization, because tobacco is also a human right issue. Gender-based organization, because tobacco has been known to negatively affect certain genders. And environmental sort of organizations also need to come on board, because tobacco affects the environment. Children, we've seen in all tobacco growing areas in the country, out of the country, globally, there is a lot of child labor in most of these farms. So children's rights organizations also need to come on board. And when all these people join hands, I'm sure the tobacco-free Kenya and tobacco-free society is a possibility.
Thank you so much, Achieng, for joining us today and for sharing your journey in tobacco control from 2014 up to today. So what would be your advice to young tobacco control champions who are getting into this space and are eager to make an impact and to see policy changes?
Well, thank you also for having me, and I'm more than happy to have shared the journey that I've walked. And the other thing is to advise young people. Tobacco control is like a continuous wheel, which keeps on moving, because we had tobacco control actors who were there. Some have already left us. We already have others like myself and other players in the field, and we are seeing young people coming in, which first of all I would like to welcome them to tobacco control, and it's a good thing to see young people coming on board, because the tobacco industry, one of their tactics is to target young people. Whatever products they're coming up with, they're actually not targeting old people. They're targeting young people. Look at their products, the vapes, the e-cigarettes, the oral nicotine pouches. All those are targeted to young people. So when you see young people coming into the fight and are speaking loudly against these products, that is a progress that we are seeing. So young people need to reclaim their voice in this space. Young people need to be willing also to listen to the voices that have been there before, because there is an element with experience. Because sometimes when you go to battle and you're not well prepared or well versed with the terrain, you're bound to make mistakes, critical mistakes. And tobacco control is not like any other field. Tobacco control means that you're dealing with a very gigantic tobacco industry that has a lot of manipulative tactics, that has a lot of muscles to even influence policymakers in certain ways. So they need to be willing to listen to advice, to sit down and even work together with people who've walked the journey, so that the mentorship on the transition becomes more like a continuum. There's no vacuum in the fight. The other thing is that I know when you come to this advocacy space, there are a number of things that would create division amongst the tobacco control actors, particularly the young people. There's the issues of money, there's the issue of everyone wants to dominate here and there. It's pointless. The best thing is to join hands, taking advantage of each and everyone's strength, because I know young people are endowed with a lot of strength, endowed with a lot of talent, endowed with a lot of skills, and they have the energy. So instead of wasting this energy fighting each other, young people need to join hands and build a very strong voice of young people that is going to send shockwaves to the tobacco industry, that is going to ensure that pro young people policies are also being passed. Because when at the policy level, any misfoot ensures or rather breeds wrong policies in place, because people are busy fighting each other, and the industry is also busy influencing whoever is influencing, and wrong policies are coming in place. So I would advise young people not to waste a lot of time fighting each other. Let them collaborate. Let them bring in all their strengths. Let them bring in all their talents and their skill sets for the sake of tobacco control. And I would also advise young people not to focus on the money. Yeah, in tobacco control, there is no money. In tobacco control, there is a lot of positive things that comes out of it, because when you've ensured that there is a policy that is protecting lives of people coming into force and being enforced, everyone wants to live in a secure environment, in an environment where their rights are being upheld, where their rights to health is being upheld. So I see there's a lot of good in that. But when you look at it in terms of money, probably tobacco control might not be the field for you. But if you are pushed for the goodness of the society, the health of the public, the well-being of the general population, I think tobacco control is the right place to be. And I must say it's a good journey to take. I've been there since 2014, and although I've moved on from the organization that I was supporting, but I'm still, whatever I'm doing, I'm still doing issues to do with tobacco control, because I've seen the benefit. I've lost very close people to me to tobacco use. So my push for tobacco control is not for any monetary gain. I've seen the effects of these things. So I'm pushing it. It's more personal to me, you get. And when people get in tune with what tobacco can actually cause or can do, the focus changes. You stop focusing on the money, you start focusing on how can you save people's lives. So young people, karibuni sana.
Asante sana. I hope you don't mind me asking, who did you lose?
I've lost people. I lost an uncle to throat cancer. My dad currently is diabetic, and he's been a chain smoker all his life. My dad-in-law. I lost an auntie who was a serious smoker. Yeah, and I lost a very close friend. A close friend not related in any way, but in the fight. There's we had some guy called Gumbao Kithi. Gumbao Kithi was a journalist. He worked with the big media houses in the country. And what happened is, early in his career, he started smoking. And you see, within that period, he developed some complications, heart complications. So he went on to a point where he couldn't work anymore. So he moved from media houses here and there, and they couldn't sustain him. So they had to let him go. So he used to be the correspondent of, I think, the Standard. So issues in cost, he was the one who was reporting, you know. So, you know, correspondences, they get paid per story and all that. So, and that could not support his health needs. And later on, Gumbau passed on, yeah. And this is someone that through Ketka, we used to support him financially somehow, because he used to do some stories on tobacco control in the coast, and sometimes he could not afford his medication, and from that. We could actually just support him in getting medicine, even without the stories, because we know the need that he had at that moment. And this guy passed on, you know. And that changed my push for tobacco control. That is what changed my push for tobacco control. Because this is the clear evidence. We even went and took his story. We have his story on YouTube. This is a clear case of someone losing life out of tobacco. And if we are not careful, we'll lose more people. And that's why we need young people to join the fight. We need more people. We actually need a legal team to join and sue the industry. We need to sue the tobacco industry because of the effects that it causes on people. The people that die out of this thing, the people that get diseases resulting from tobacco use. The country is awash with people who suffer the effects of tobacco. The other day we also had a lady from, she was working as a waiter in a bar. She never smoked. Yeah, she wasn't a primary smoker. But as a secondary smoker, she had some lung complications. So these things are real. And we need to tackle them with the reality that they present. So we need to take them personally. We need to take them, like they say, we need to pull the bull by the horn. And we don't need to dance around with the tobacco industry. It's not our friend. They are here for business. And until we realize what we are actually fighting, I think we may need to change our strategies, we may need to change our tactics. We can't fight the industry with the same tactics. We can't fight the industry with the same approaches. Because the industry knows, you know, the industry knows that this is what we are going to do. Sometimes they even throw it as a bait. So we are busy running after the bait. The industry is out there doing whatever it does. Then we realize, oh, they were doing something big on that side. So it's good for young people to come on board. It's good for young people to join the fight. It's good for young people to even learn what the industry is and join the bandwagon in actually demystifying everything that the industry is made of.
Achieng, thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey. There's so many lessons we've learned, gotten so many insights, and the work ahead continues. So, asante sana.
Thanks for having me.